So I have a question for you this morning. Have you ever overpacked for a trip, anticipating that you were going to need a lot of things, but it turned out having a lot of things did not make your trip better. It actually made it way worse. And please don't elbow the family member that came next to you. That's just rude. When I was growing up, I did Boy Scouts, and before any backpacking trip, we would have a meeting called a shakedown. A shakedown was a getting together. You bring your fully packed backpack because you're carrying everything on your back for 2 or 3 or 4 days, or however long that backpacking trip was. And at the shakedown, everybody in the group had to take everything out of their backpack and explain why it was necessary. And at the end of a shakedown, usually there was a pile of stuff in the middle of the floor that turns out we didn't think we needed that stuff. So it was a way to kind of lighten our packs, especially when you're like 14 years old and you weigh 100 pounds maybe. You can't carry a very big backpack. And so it was especially important for these early teen Boy Scout backpacking trips. Well, there was one trip where a friend in the scout troop, a guy named Colton, he did not go to the shakedown. I think it was actually his first backpacking trip. And so he didn't make the shakedown. Somehow they let him go on the trip anyways. And so he met us at the trailhead. We started hiking, and he started complaining that his backpack was too heavy, which, put a bunch of boys in the woods and tell them to care for each other. And so we all made fun of him and gave him a hard time about complaining too much. We get a mile down the trail. This is the first of 3 days that we're going to be out there. And we're like, Colton, what is the deal? And he's like, my backpack's just too heavy. I'm not going any further. So we all stopped. And then the adults proceeded to unpack his bag. And they found some interesting things. A gigantic flashlight with 4D batteries, right? Like something that you might as well have just brought like a weight set to weigh down your pack. A bunch of Walmart camping supplies still in the packages, right? Like the package it had with cardboard to hang up on the rack, just kind of put in there. And then, I kid you not, a gallon of Sunny Delight. Colton was not going camping for 3 days in the woods without a gallon of Sunny Delight. And to his dismay, the Sunny Delight got hid behind a tree so we could maybe enjoy those spoils on the way back. And we distributed the rest of his overly heavy gear because you can't just leave it in the woods. And we proceeded on our trip. Now, you might not have ever tried to bring a gallon of Sunny Delight on a backpacking trip, but I bet there has been a time where you've overpacked, where you put too much in the suitcase and you had to sit there and wait to see, is it gonna get below 50 pounds? I got to take out a couple jackets so I don't have to pay the extra charge at the airport for the heavy suitcase. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Sometimes we overpack because we think we need more stuff, but the truth is there's a benefit to traveling light. We're starting a new sermon series today as we get into the summer. The sermon series is called Travel Light, and we're going to talk about how there's some things that we were actually never meant to carry. And I think many times we think about life as a series of things where we just keep adding things. And I think we can especially think about this with the Christian life. You start to follow Jesus and you have to start adding things, right? You add a Sunday morning church habit to your calendar. You add maybe some time to read the Bible or a Bible app that everyone's recommending. You add a prayer life in different ways, all the different ways that could look. Maybe those church people start to pressure you to add a Saturday serving experience or a mission trip or a small group. There's a lot of adding things that we could do to follow Jesus. But did you know Jesus does not just want us to add things to our lives? There are actually things that Jesus wants us to do the opposite. He doesn't want us to add to our lives. There are some things he calls us to let go of, to stop carrying, and to travel lighter. We especially see this in Matthew 11, 28 through 30. This will be an anchor verse as we go through this series for this week and the next 3 weeks. Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Sometimes when we're following Jesus, it's not just a matter of adding something else to our plate, but it's a matter of identifying what is it that Jesus never intended us to carry so that we can let it go. We're going to jump into a passage in Luke chapter 12 where Jesus encounters someone with a question, and that leads him into a teaching. Luke chapter 12, if you have your Bibles, we'll start in verse 13. And if you don't have your Bibles, it'll be on the screen. Someone in the crowd said to him, that's saying to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." I want to pause just for a second. It seems like there's some anonymous person in the crowd who is in the midst of a family feud about inheritance being shared fairly. A really unfortunate kind of family disagreement to get into. But the big mistake he makes is he tries to get Jesus to referee the family feud. He's trying to get Jesus to pick a side. When we ask Jesus to come and back up my side when our motives aren't pure, Jesus usually doesn't back up our side, and he usually tries to reveal what's beneath that. So let's look what Jesus does. Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" And so basically he's saying, my job is not to referee family feuds. I'm not trying to tell you which party is right and which party is wrong. If you think that's why I came, you've missed something. And then Jesus goes on to teach. Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." So he gives them a principle that he thinks they need to follow as they're navigating this family disagreement. Be careful of greed. Watch out for it. Life's not about how much can you gain. But Jesus doesn't just give them a principle. He then goes on to teach them by telling a story. Jesus often does this. And so I want to read this whole story, and then we're going to see kind of what we do with this. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God." This is the word of God for the people of God. Everybody said, "Thanks be to God." This is a tough story to read because it challenges a lot of our cultural assumptions in the time and place that we live. It really critiques a way of life that assumes that the more I get, the more I have, the happier I will be. Now, I think many of us subconsciously just kind of follow this script. What would be so bad about having a bank account that's so full, I have to get another bank account to put extra money in? And what would be so bad about having everything so full that I could just retire to a beach and eat good food and drink good drink and enjoy the rest of my life? That, to many of us, sounds like the good life. I think in many ways that is the good life narrative of our society. That's the key to a happy life, and many of us operate and live like if we can just accomplish that, then I would not have any problems. The problem is, I don't think that's true. But it is the narrative we believe. So this is the first thing we need to kind of wrestle with. We believe that happiness through ultimate control. You see, you could say that this is a parable about money, wealth, greed. I think there's something deeper than that. It's not just about how we think about money. This is a parable about wanting to be in control of a light He wants ultimate control over his life. He believes that if he builds bigger barns and has more control over his resources, then he will be able to kick back and relax and have a happier life. And we often believe that. If I have ultimate control, my life will be better. Control, I think for many of us in the suburbs of Cedar Park and Leander, it can be like an alternative religion. So hear me out on this. Control promises us salvation. It tells us that if we can just optimize enough, secure our things enough, plan enough, predict enough, then we will finally be safe. And so we believe things like, if I can just control my schedule and optimize my calendar and routines and maximize my productivity time, then I will be in more control and I will be happier. We believe that if we can control our environment by buying the right house in the right school district and the right neighborhood, that us and our family will be more successful and happier. All of life could be better. We believe that if we save for the future, there is a possibility of one day hitting our fire to not have to work anymore, and then I would have ultimate freedom and truly be happy if I could just have ultimate control. Now, not all this stuff is bad. It's not bad to want to live in a house in a good neighborhood in a good school district. It's not bad to have a calendar or a lifestyle that's organized. It's not bad to save money and want to be able to save money and have some financial independence. The problem comes when it becomes ultimate. You see, the problem in Jesus' parable is not that he had a bumper crop and had a whole bunch of extra that one year. The surplus is great. The problem for the guy in the parable is that he lets it get to his head. He doesn't want just a little bit more. He wants ultimate control. But the big irony in this parable, it's really kind of a tragedy, is that the second he reaches that point of maximum control, he dies. It's so sad, right? It's such a tragic parable. Let's look. God, very night, and I think my mic might be losing batteries or something. I don't know if there's any extra batteries back there. From this guy's perspective in the parable, I don't know, there's like a special sting that comes when we think we've planned and prepared enough. We think we've put in all the hard work to arrive at a place only to have it snatched away from us by something outside of our control, right? That's one of those things that just hurts so bad. I actually think this actually goes hand in hand with his old theodicy question. Why do bad things happen to good people? I think sometimes we ask that question, we're genuinely trying to understand God and how the world works, but I think sometimes we ask that question and there's a different question behind it. It might sound like this. God, can't I do enough good to ward off the bad things? God, can't I be responsible enough to have contingency plans for every possible disaster? God, can't I be good enough that I can avoid some of the worst discomforts and tragedies of life? Can't I figure out some way, God, to just be in control of my life so no bad things ever happen? And the answer is no. Control is not the answer to avoid suffering. It's not the answer to having a happy life. It's actually an illusion that disorients us when we realize it isn't working. The illusion of control is exhausting. And just so I can be in more control, I'm going to change out my microphone real quick. See if that works okay. And hopefully it's going through the live stream too. So the illusion of control is exhausting. What I think is true is that the more control we have, the more control we need to have. Have you ever experienced this? Like having some amount of control feels good, but then we get our minds thinking, well, what else do I need to be in control of so it all doesn't come crashing down? This is why I think as we go through life, when we accumulate things and we get more and more that we can be in control of, we get very risk averse. Because what if we lost all of it, right? That would be so scary. We would feel out of control. The more control we have, the more control we need to have. And it's exhausting to try to keep up with. It's like being on a treadmill and trying to get across a room. It's just, you're never going to get there. I've experienced this a few ways in my life, but there was one way that I wanted to share. You see, I love to mountain bike. And so I mountain biked right after college, but when Tracy and I started having kids, it just really wasn't an option to pay money to have a nice mountain bike and to have the free time to go mountain bike. It just wasn't in the cards during that season. So when I finished seminary and our kids got a little bit older, I got a mountain bike. I got a nice used hardtail, meaning it only has suspension on the front. But I was young. I was fine with that. And I was very content with that mountain bike. We got to go on a vacation to Colorado, and I even got to take that bike to Colorado to go in the real mountains, which was so exciting. I'm not sure my lungs and my legs were quite ready for it, right? Mountain biking in Austin, Texas is a little different. We had so much fun taking that bike to Colorado. And then over the course of the next year, I was able to acquire a much better mountain bike. And let me explain what I mean by much better mountain bike. We budget pretty strictly in my family. We just, mostly because I'm very type A and I like to be in control, okay? And so we track every dollar we spend, and part of how Tracy and I both have money to spend on things that the other person doesn't have to agree on is we each have like an allowance of spending money, right? I bought a bike that was 2 years worth of my allowance of spending money. Mostly because it was the pandemic and there wasn't anything else to spend money on. But also, I just kind of agreed, I'm just not going to spend money for 2 years so I can buy. I wanted it that bad. It's a full suspension mountain bike, meaning it's got a shock in the front and it's got suspension in the back. So my old man back, getting into my 40s, will be able to keep mountain biking for a long time. Do you see? It's a way for me to be in more control. And so what's better than bringing an old hardtail mountain bike to Colorado, bringing the new, shiny, exciting, full suspension real mountain bike to Colorado? And so I devised a plan, and I was in control of this plan. It was going great. The plan starts with teaching my kids to do a long road trip to Colorado. And we've mastered that over the last few years. 15 hours, we're going to stop 4 times, and we just go. We're not in it for the journey. We're trying to get to a destination, okay? My kids have come to terms with this. iPads in the car help, especially, for the 15 hours. I also got a bike rack so that we could take the bike all the way there. And so the night before we leave, get the car all packed. We got the bike rack on. My bike and Abigail's bike are on the back. Everett's little, I think at that time he had a balance bike. We fit that inside the car. And we start driving. 4:30 in the morning. We're going to get there in one day, so we got to start early. I'm telling my kids, go back to sleep. It'll go faster if you sleep. Quit asking questions so I can have my peaceful morning drive with my cup of coffee. We get 10 miles down the road, and I'm looking in the side mirror, and my bike is moving. Like, it's moving way more than I'm comfortable with. So I pulled over. Tracy's like, what are we doing? Like, we're not losing that bike. Do you understand what I went through to get that bike? We're not going to lose that bike. I've got to be in control. So got some extra paracord, tied it on more, start driving again. 2 miles down the road, we're pulling over again. I don't feel good about it. I am afraid if I lose this prized possession, what would happen? Over the next 2 hours and 23 little stops so I could tie more paracord onto my bike, Tracy is not impressed, right? My kids are not sleeping, and I am stressed. I had a plan. I was in control, but the amount of control I needed to feel safe in the situation was greater than was possible. I ended up taking the tires off the bike and sticking them over the kid's head inside the car because they were catching the wind too much. And the kids are like, why do I have a tire? I'm like, don't worry about it. It's okay. Everyone's going to make sacrifices. It's okay. So this is what I'm talking about. Having a little control is good, and then it leads us to want more control or improve the situation or okay, but now I have things. I got to protect what I have. Oh my gosh, Now I'm clamoring for control, right? And that kind of life is exhausting. Now, it's funny when it's about a bike. I would not have laughed if my bike fell off, I'll be honest. We do this with all sorts of things in our life. Is we think that we can be in control, so we try to maximize control, and it's exhausting. Not only is it exhausting, it really is a big obstacle for our spiritual life. In the parable that we read, that guy tried to have maximum control, and he did not end up in a good place with God. Actually, the end of the parable, verse 21, this is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. He's so focused on seeking happiness through ultimate control that he forgets to include God as a part of his life. And at the end of the life, that's not good. You see, control for this guy in the parable, but also for many of us, if we're really searching our own hearts and being honest with ourselves, control becomes an idol. The idol of control keeps us from God. At the root of it, I think we seek ultimate control because we don't want to trust anyone else, including God. And so when we make an idol out of control, we're living into this belief that I'm enough, I can be in control, I can plan my work and work my plan, I know best, I will work hard and muscle through and make it happen, and all that stuff that goes along when we just want to force our way. The problem is, none of those mindsets involve God. All of those just really create a barrier between us and God. Now, I find when I'm operating from a place of wanting control, there's actually something even deeper beneath this. And I wonder if this might be a little bit different for each person, but for me, what it often comes down to is that it's difficult to rest when things are unfinished, or when they are chaotic and cluttered, or when they're uncertain, right? And so this is why at home, I will be like a hawk on my kids, trying to get them to clean their room, because I feel like I can rest if I can master my environment, right? Control can start to function like a savior. Like, if I can just keep everything managed, I will finally have peace. See, I think part of the secret of having a life with God is actually experiencing parts of our life that are outside of our control, because then we realize how much we need God. Now, the world will dish this out to us in all sorts of ways. And it might be a day or an event, or it might be a season. That's one way to learn that you need God, right? It's just to live life for a little bit, and the world will remind you you're not actually in as much control as you wish you were. But it's not just the enduring tragedies and difficulties in life that can grow our trust in God. There's other things we can do to voluntarily let go of control. So this parable that we read of Jesus is a great example of what not to do. We're going to look at a positive example of what to do in the book of James. And so James chapter 4 has a few verses that teach on this exact same thing. Starting in verse 13, James 4:13. Now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes. All such boasting is evil. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. So this teaching starts by reiterating a bit of Jesus' parable, right? The truth that overconfidence in our ability to plan our work and work our plan without acknowledging that we aren't in control of everything is not going to lead us to a good place. But this teaching also has a positive example of what to do. And we find that in James 4, verse 15. We're gonna look at this first again. Instead, Instead of overconfident planning, trying to be in control all by yourself, instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. And so first, I want you to notice what it does not say. It doesn't say, if you love Jesus, you won't plan for anything, right? It doesn't say, if you want to let go of control, it also means letting go of any goals or aspirations in life. It doesn't say to not have a plan. It says when you make a plan, there's some other things you should do alongside that plan. And the main thing is, if it's the Lord's will. Years ago, I was in a church in El Salvador, and it was a very large, charismatic church in downtown San Salvador. It was a big enough church that they actually had translation systems for guests that would come from other countries, and so I was able to pop in an earbud, and that really helped me. My Spanish is okay, but my brain would get tired after like a 2-hour service in a different language. And as I'm putting the earbud in, they're doing announcements. And I'll never forget the way this guy introduced the events in the church that week. He said, I want to tell you about some stuff that's coming up. If Jesus doesn't return before Wednesday, we're going to have a church picnic. And if he doesn't come back by Thursday, we're going to have this gathering for our small groups. And I was like, really? Wow, they're really serious about this Jesus coming back thing. And it struck me as a little funny, maybe a little convicting also, that most of us probably don't wonder or expect that Jesus will return anytime soon. Maybe we could rethink that a little bit. It's probably a whole different sermon. The point is that if it's the Lord's will, I don't think it's just a matter of providing a disclaimer whenever you're telling someone about your plans, right? It's like, what are you planning on doing this year? You're like, well, if it's God's will, we're going to do a road trip to Colorado, but, we'll see. Like, I don't think that's the point of James 4:15. So what's the point of James 4:15? Well, the point is, it gives us a couple things that help us know, how do we let go of control? How do we let go of control so it's not an idol, so it's not an illusion that exhausts us? And here's the first way. We let go of control by holding our plans loosely. That's a part of what that passage means when it says, if it's the Lord's will, he's leaving room for the idea that God could come in and change my plans. It's not to say I don't have plans or aspirations or goals, but it's mentally and emotionally preparing ourselves for the possibility that God could come in and shake things up. Or maybe just our plans don't work out. Sometimes that happens, right? And it's not just a phrase. It's not about using a phrase when we speak about the future. It's about a heart posture of humility in our planning, in our living life. It's a recognition that God is God, so I'm not going to try to be God. And if we believe that, then we can make plans, right? You might plan for a career move to find more satisfaction in work, but you can also know that God might have different ideas about what that career move looks like, and God might think you need a little bit different journey than just the straight line to the next career thing. We can try to keep the house clean and the family on schedule and have a peaceful environment to live in, but we can also acknowledge that there's going to be some weeks where God calls us to spend time with people more than just manage our environment and keep a perfect house. And that's okay. We can plan to go to the swim meet with both kids and then the dance event afterwards and still have great family time and have a perfect Saturday, but you could wake up and your kid could get sick. That happened to me yesterday, only after I got to the swim meet with both kids, right? And so, okay, surprise, plans are going to change. It doesn't mean don't have plans. It means hold the plans loosely. When we hold our plans loosely, when we have open hands with the plans that we make, it helps us let go of the idol of control because we begin to expect that sometimes things are going to change. That's just a part of life. Some of us need more reminders of this than others. Between Tracy and I need the reminder way more than she does. That's okay. So we hold our plans loosely, but we also need something more than just let go. I think the best way to keep ourselves from holding back onto the idol of control is to have something else to grab onto. And that something else is God. And so we hold our plans loosely, but then we hold on tightly to God. And especially when things are feeling out of control, we can let go of control by trusting God when life feels out of control. Now, this isn't saying that God's going to just make everything happen the way you want it to the second you trust him. That's not the promise here. Trusting God when life feels out of control means remembering God's goodness. It means knowing that no matter what comes your way, you have God, and so it's going to be okay. It might sometimes mean crying out to God, God, help, I'm struggling. I would like to be in control, and I'm clearly not in control right now. And sometimes God's going to come in and do something to change your situation. But sometimes God's not going to change your situation. He's just going to remind you that he's there with you, right? And so trusting God when you feel out of control, it's the ultimate option. It's the ultimate thing to grab onto instead of your own feeling of being in control. Trusting God to be our peace in the midst of chaos is the ultimate antidote to the idol of control. We don't need to be in control of everything because we serve a God that has more than enough of whatever we need. And so here's the question that I have for you today. God invites you to let go of control. That's not something he has designed you to carry with you through life. Some amount of autonomy, some amount of planning, yes, but not ultimate control. So I wonder, where in your life do you love to grab on to ultimate control? You've packed it in your bag, and you've packed way too much of it, and it's weighing you down. It's not giving you a happier life. In some ways, it makes you more miserable, but you're not really sure, how do I let go of this? The good news today is that Jesus isn't asking you to let go of your peace. He actually offers a different kind of peace that's way better than being in control. Jesus offers peace for those of us that need to let go of control. In Matthew 11:28, he says this, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Let's pray. Jesus, we give you thanks that you are the ultimate source of peace for us. You're way better than the illusion of control that we talk ourselves into sometimes, or that we practice by default. I'm asking God, would you come and show us the places where you're calling us to let go of control, to be less of the masters of our own destiny and more of the people who are looking at you as the master of everything. Pray that you would come and help us by the power of your Spirit to release control and to hold on tightly to you. Would you come remind us of your goodness? Would you come and bring us peace, not dependent on our circumstances or how controlled everything around us is, but would you come and bring us a different kind of peace, your peace that surpasses all understanding? We give ourselves to you, and we invite you to come and to teach us as we apply this to our lives. Amen.